The Todd Shapiro Show.
Time to hit the button!
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance.
How's it going, man?
Good, dude. Where are you today?
I'm still home. I'm thankful to say.
Very
Home in
nice.
Southern California, definitely enjoying the better weather, and again, thankful to be off the road for a minute. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well, thank you. We have Kiefer Sutherland on the program in about 20 minutes, so I'm very excited for that.
Awesome.
Not to say I'm not excited for you, Lance, okay? It's not to say I'm not excited for you, buddy.
But I didn't kick off my career on a movie like Lost Boys, which was actually filmed in Santa Cruz, just minutes from where I grew up. So stoked that you're going to have Kiefer on. Great guy. And I think he lives right down the road from me in Brentwood, actually. So,
Oh, come on. Yeah, he's an awesome and a Canadian, too. So really a respected actor out of Canada. Not born in Canada, but a Canadian. And his father was actually Tommy Douglas, who was, I think, the first... prime minister was he the prime minister, Bilal?
It was his maternal grandfather, and he was the premier of Saskatchewan.
Premier of Saskatchewan. But was Tommy Douglas ever prime minister? I should know
go.
this. And he helped push through healthcare in this country.
Well, there you go. Something you guys are very well known for, world around. So that is good news.
Very good news. Some bad news for cannabis supporters in the state of New Jersey. They were going to do this big vote today, but they canceled it, saying, hey, there weren't going to be enough votes.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And it is a bit of a slight setback. We've had it before, as we've known in this industry and talked about on several occasions. Was a little disappointed, though, because, New Jersey was one of those wild cards where, we had a governor there that was very much in opposition of cannabis. And then, of course, changing of the guard, which happens every several years here in the States, and was really rooting for some of the efforts that, was going on around cannabis in respect to New Jersey. But it's definitely a setback for Mr. Murphy, and the fact that, despite having full control from the Democratic side of things for the state and Senate Assembly, there's definitely been some infighting there and struggles to move forward as far as legislature with his progressive agenda. So was a little bummed to hear that. Again, we've discussed this before. For some reason on the Eastern Seaboard, where traditionally politics do run deep and things do get drawn out, a good case in point would be Florida and the legal use of flower, not just concentrates for cannabis. But this is kind of par for the course. It's just sad, though, because we really saw New Jersey, again, as kind of a keystone state that would open up the door and opportunity to cannabis in several states around, specifically, in the northeast of the U.S. So it's a bit unfortunate, but we'll see what happens in the coming months and years.
Yeah, it also affects certain stocks for the MSOs, right? Who would have positioned themselves quite nicely and largely in those provinces, in those states. I apologize for me. Not that I necessarily always talk about my positions that I hold, but one of the companies that I actually have quite a large investment in is True Leaf Cannabis out of Florida. And based on their revenues and their store expansion and stuff. And by the way, this is not a promo. This is just me talking because you mentioned Florida. And I invested heavily in that company because I sort of predicted that Florida was going that way with their increase in patients, with their increase in elderly patients, and that company doing really well. So it's sort of interesting to follow it all, and as things get passed or not get passed, but certain things do affect stocks. Not just consumers, but stocks a lot. These news releases.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, and there's something new every day in the news, both domestic and international. Of course, we focus more so, you and I, on North America in general, but there's always something going on. But you do see that backlash in certain instances on Wall Street, just like you do in the dot-com space where I was for years. Something come out, maybe there would be some sort of breach of security or privacy for Facebook, and sure enough, you'd see things dip the day after. So that is something that's constant. On the positive side, though, when Cuomo really put his good foot forward on saying hemp was going to be this crop that would make a difference for the state of New York, we saw what happened with the stocks there as well. So it could go both ways. Again, it's a little bit of a setback.
Not for the faint of heart, pot stocks, though. I'll tell you that much. I joke with people. Remember the old day they would show the egg frying and saying, this is your brain on drugs? I joke with people, and that egg frying is like, that's your brain following pot stocks with the swings and stuff.
It does. does. It has ebbs and flows, and there's some things, we saw it for the last several years, especially in January, when Sessions was in office. He'd always inevitably shoot a cannon over the bow of the ship that is stocks and investments in cannabis, both those that touch the plant and those that are ancillary. It happened every January, and last year was a good example, not this year, but last January, where we saw as much as 35% of all investments leave the stock exchange because of his reaction to legalization finally kicking off in California for adult use. Of course, a lot of that money came back. It rebounded. But, man, you're right. It's just it's like watching the horses around the track, but the track doesn't have just one lap. You're constantly seeing who's jockeying for first, and it changes sometimes on the daily. So
yeah, and I will say I follow it very closely. I'm under the opinion personally that there'll be a bit of a pullback still. A couple companies will ultimately always take off, but I tell people, don't get caught up in the pot stock phase or craze because you think you can go and make some money. I think a lot of that money's been made. Don't get me wrong. There's some junior players that I think will do well, but you really got to read very hard, do your due diligence, look at management teams, and look at proven track records because like that .com era, there's sort of a lot of different companies going public. Listen, I know personally that would be my dream one day, getting behind one and taking it public. And obviously I would want the best for it. And, for those who do invest, they'll just always do due diligence, read up and do it cautiously.
Yep, 100%. That's the best recommendation you could do. Not that neither you nor I give any sort of stock recommendations, but those are just general statements, right? I mean, do they have a dream team? Because a lot of these companies pull kind of Johnny-come-latelys that they might be gurus in the banking industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the alcohol industry. But this is a very different industry, and I know everyone says that, this is different, but it is something that has a different cause, has a different meaning, and definitely has a different trajectory than some of those more traditional or brick-and-mortar type businesses. So having people who have that expertise and that knowledge and education and insight, as well as the actual network and connections within the industry to get things done, those are the teams that you want to keep an eye out on. And some have done a phenomenal job, both on your side of the border and mine. Finding those right people to move things forward. So definitely good advice for anyone that's looking to invest here.
Lance Lambert's hanging out with us, bovidinc.com. I saw a story, and is this sort of significant? Does this matter? But out of Guam, they said the Catholic Church came out against the legalization of cannabis. Does that, in this day and age, does that matter still?
I think there's relevance just because the Catholic Church is one of the largest churches globally in the world. And but then you look at the Latter-day Saints, LDS, or better known as Mormon Church out of Utah. They definitely have their own approach and angle. And at first they were anti, but very much became pro. And that's what passed yes on 2 in Utah when we voted as a state during mid-election last year. And so I think that's a good example of, the church very much being from a positive perspective, not just a neutral or negative perspective like some other religions are, and how much an influence it has on the industry. But then again, you look at the two, and not to get into religion, we talk about religion, politics, and money, the 3 things you never discuss on a first date, right? But it is one of those things where, religion.
Hey, how big's your joint? Sorry.
Exactly. But I applauded the LDS Church because they are very passionate people. They're from the earth. They're natural. Their approach and ideology towards things in general very much felt to be in sync with cannabis. So I was very ecstatic, and I think many were in the industry to see them come on board. But it is unfortunate with the Catholic Church because, again, we've discussed the use of hemp and cannabis both on the textile commercial side and the adult use recreational side, has been around for centuries. So the fact that such an entity would blast it is unfortunate. But again, old versus new, sign of the times. We'll see what happens.
And then I guess, moving to Africa, in Zimbabwe, they just authorized a license to their first medical cannabis company. So kind of interesting, right?
Correct. Yeah, Zimbabwe, they've actually been growing. So there's several countries within the continent of Africa. I'd say the one that's leading right there that we keep an eye on is South Africa specifically. It makes sense. Johannesburg and Cape Town are 2 epicenters with several industries in respect to Africa as a whole. But you do have Zimbabwe. It's been doing production, but is moving forward in medical, and there's a few other that are following suit as well. It's the same with South America. You have several countries people aren't even aware of that have some level of legalization or deregulation, but also there's that one kind of leader down there, Chile, specifically Santiago, that a lot of people are setting up shop, I'd say closely followed by Colombia as a country. So there's these countries that are taking the lead. And more recently, what I was surprised by, again, we've discussed this, Todd, but Thailand to launch a medical program and South Korea to launch a medical program. So there's two leaders in the Northern Pan-Pacific or Asian region. So, again, we have these few countries around every continent that are kind of coming around, and I think they're going to be the ones that are the alphas and they're going to be most successful because they're going to be many steps ahead of what will inevitably be the competition in neighboring countries.
Lance Lambert's hanging out with us in about 10 minutes time, or 15 minutes. We'll get to Kiefer Sutherland. Lance, if we do cut you off at some point, I apologize. He's calling live from L.A. Near you. The CBD craze is absolutely massive, and everybody's talking about it right now. CBD this, CBD that. CBD is going to be a $22 billion business by the year 2022 is a stat I just read. What I wanted to ask you, Lance, is when you see CBD now in all these different products, from drinks to topicals, whatever it may be, where are people getting bulk CBD from? Like, is that how it's working? Are companies buying bulk CBD and then getting a formulation expert to put them into products?
Yes, 100%. So a majority of CBD is being bought in bulk. Traditionally, it's being sold in what we call bales because it is so large. And the first thing that does pop in your head, of course, is hay or oat or straw. But it's 100 to 300 pound bales. So you're talking about 100 plus kilo in some instances. And it is large scale. And a lot of times they are purchasing in bulk, the formulating it on their own, or there are suppliers. There's a large one out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. And being Colorado is one of the largest producers of hemp, followed by Oregon. And believe it or not, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia are coming on board as well. But there are some companies that actually do essentially go through the full extraction process, and you're able to purchase just the raw oil. And that is a little bit easier for some because moving around, again, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of product for processing does become quite tedious. And those same companies do offer white label as well. There is a difference in quality, though. It's something that isn't as closely monitored, unfortunately, as it is on the cannabis or marijuana side of the plant. But it's still relevant and it matters. Another thing to keep in mind is if it's isolate or full spectrum, because the way that CBD interacts with our bodies, it is factored in the way that the formula is established. You're always going to have more effective penetration into your system because this is an oil-based, not a water-based, like alcohol, for example. So, having some sort of trace element of THC. Now, legally in the States, it has to be under 0.04% THC on any CBD-only product, but even that little percentage does make a difference in penetration into our bloodstream and into our body to actually take effect on the endocannabinoid system. So I just recommend doing your homework and making sure you get your CBD from a reliable resource, no matter if it's online or local purchase, depending on where you are located geographically.
What's the difference between isolate and full spectrum? I didn't really get that.
So the isolate is specifically pulling out only the CBD from that extract. So it is isolating it from all other cannabinoids and all terpenes within that source product. When you get full spectrum, it's not so much the case. Full spectrum actually allows you to get more of the other attributes from the cannabinoids and terpenes within the plant matter itself. So that is limited legal availability, depending on where you are, compared to, again, just an industrial hemp that's being crushed to a CBD. So, again, you'll get a little more insight on that no matter if you're shopping Charlotte's Web or, some of the more top-line CBD companies out there. They give a little more insight and detail into what product offerings they have. And that's one of the terms that you'll come across is what iteration of CBD you're looking at or possibly purchasing. But it's more than just, hey, this is ginkgo biloba, or this is echinacea, or this is fill in the blank, ester C. That is just that one element, and there's not much more to it. Quality is still a factor based on where it's sourced, But again, there's a little bit more homework to do when consuming CBD.
And is it a bit of the Wild West still without true regulations in it, meaning that you might not get the exact dosage that says is on the label? Like, is it still a little bit up in the air in terms of just not enough sort of time and research has been put into it? I mean, it's close enough, but not quite. Like, is it there, the CBD you might find in stores across the world?
No, you're right. I mean, there is still an inconsistency in quality. Something that, again, to your point, isn't tested quite as much because the regulations aren't as much there, is something that does contain levels of THC or levels above 0.04%. So, unfortunately, you do have some iterations out there that are watered down that might be using some artificial fillers in it to rather be, to add flavor via flavonoids or maybe, some sort of food-grade terpene to add flavor. So there is a bit of inconsistency, and that's where we really need the FDA to get more so involved with it. And that's one thing. It's a bit of confusion around the Farm Bill, which we got all excited about, getting that sorted here in the States. But the Farm Bill, again, does more so address cannabis from, or I should say specifically hemp, from, being used in an industrial and textile form, not so much on the food grade side to be used in drinks or edibles, et cetera. So that's something that's still being worked through that a lot of people aren't aware of. But you're right, the trend. I mean, there was an event, a trade show down here in Southern California a few friends went to, and they're like, Lance, the product is everywhere. It is in companies that are doing rejuvenation formulas for bodybuilders and such. They're adding this into the other elements and existing Eastern medicine components in their formulas. There's energy drinks that are incorporating CBD alongside taurine and caffeine. Every different angle you can imagine. And when you hear CVS, that was something you probably saw in the news, that CVS, which is essentially kind of our Shoppers Drug Mart, right? A little bit of that.
Hey, we're representing Canada. That a boy, Lance.
Good guys. Love Shoppers Drug Mart. But same with down here, CVS, have 800 different stores that they signed on to starting to offer CBD-based products. And that is something that they just signed a deal with a rather large company with here. So it is something that has huge momentum internationally and domestically. And CBD is going to continue to be the hero cannabinoid. There's other cannabinoids out there. I'm still a huge fan of CBN, cannabinol, which is an oxidized iteration of THC. The difference between that and THC, it's not so much the psychoactive high as it is the soothing, relaxing, and helping you sleep component of CBN. So as THC-based cannabis becomes more popular in markets, I think that's going to be a cannabinoid that's going to be very popular as well, along with CBG and some of the other more predominant cannabinoids. So this plant has so much to offer, and we're just in the infancy. It's one thing you always bring it back to, Todd, and it's so true. We're still in infancy and have quite a ways to go.
Do they have some sort of CBD product that can help your two political parties just somehow see eye to eye on something, on anything? Is there anything to create less of a divide? Maybe make this Michael Avenatti character calm down a little bit, and you hear what happened to him today?
Yeah, it is something that, we really thought it was bringing people together. In some instances, we say bipartisan. In other instances, we say nonpartisan. But we really thought that we were past that point of the dispute on either side of the aisle, so to speak. But it is coming around. And the biggest change we're seeing, especially from the political standpoint, is when it really affects someone close to home. And we saw that with a congressman out of Florida who, again, it hit very close to home for him. I believe it was a nephew or niece that had been diagnosed and was utilizing a THC-based formula for solving their ailments. And that was something that made him take a 180 and all of a sudden go, this isn't such a bad thing. It's not about what you and I grew up with the egg in the frying pan, and cannabis leads to other drugs and all these ridiculous rumors and reefer madness that we discuss. It really is a miracle plant that has so much to offer. And you asked me to do a little homework last week. One thing that's a good segue is all the opportunities in the industry. So you asked me, what are some of the top opportunities in the industry? And we've discussed on the show, there's different opportunities based on if you touch the plant or not. Some of them for touching the plant, master extractors. So you talked about someone coming up with a formula around CBD. That'd be a master extractor. You also have master growers, marijuana testers, quality control inspectors. edible chefs, dispensary managers. I mean, these are all individuals that touch the plant, but even friends of mine, and maybe yours too, that know we're somehow tied to the industry and are like, well, I want to get into it, but I don't have an expertise of the plant. You have IT management positions, marketing directors, human resource managers, product and logistics managers, software developers, lawyers, accountants, digital media managers, electricians, paralegal, writers. I mean, the list goes on. It's like any other industry, is my point, is there's so many different opportunities in this industry, whether you're interested in touching the plant or not. If you just want to be a part of the fastest growing, pun intended, but the fastest growing industry in the world, get on board now. YouMiss.com. Don't miss this opportunity if you're passionate about it and really want to make a difference.
Yeah, the sector is no doubt massive, and for some reason, Bilal, my producer, is Googling some positions right now. I'm not quite sure why. I guess I don't pay him enough.
He wants to keep his options open, you know?
Yeah, well, understandable. He has to see my mug every day. Well, Lance, I really do appreciate everything you provide for us. You're in Toronto, is it in 2 weeks?
It's actually a month. I wish it was sooner, man. Not soon enough for us to catch up again. It always seems to fly by. I will be back up there. Let's see. I'll be back up on 4/24 to 4/26. So exactly a month out for O'Cannabiz.
Right on, man.
O'Cannabiz, but looking forward to being live with you guys again. It's so fun getting in the studio and just jamming out together. I definitely enjoy it and look forward to it.
We can't wait. Hey, do me a favor. I'm going to call you today around 7:15 Eastern time, okay? Are you around 4:15-ish?
Perfect.
Okay.
I will be, yep.
I got a personal call for you. Personal. Business, my friend. Business.
Use the bat line.
I got the bat line, brother. Lance, honestly, these segments are so informative. I say it every week. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I just feel like we're always learning something new and keeping everyone up to date with the, like you said, the fastest growing sector and industry right now on the planet. So, we're just grateful for all of it. Appreciate it from BovedaInc.com. You're global leaders in two-way humidity control. Thank you again.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it, Todd.
Cheers, man. Lance Lambert, everybody.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.